XFL Day 2 draft is complete. We have the full recap and results. We got 7 more quarterbacks taken. So 442 players along with 22 quarterbacks to start training camp in 2023 as the XFL completes its Las Vegas draft. The XFL completed the final day of the XFL Draft presented by ZipRecruiter at the UFC Apex facility in Las Vegas, Nevada. Day 2 featured the 3 rounds of specialist selections, kicker, punter, long snapper, followed by open rounds for all positions. This followed Day 1 on Wednesday, which was broken into 4 position groups featuring 11 rounds of selections for each skill: offensive line position, wide receiver, running back, tight end, fullback, defensive backs, cornerback, safety, and nickel, defensive front 7, inside linebacker, edge, defensive end, defensive tackle, and then offensive line. Of the 442 non-quarterback players selected this week, 285 come with NFL experience, signed an NFL active roster or a practice squad contract. 273 XFL player selections came from the past 3 NFL draft classes. 171 were eligible for the 2022 NFL draft, 33 for the 2001 draft, and 69 for the 2000 NFL draft. The league's roster also includes 69 players who will be returning to the XFL from 2020, which is very cool. Following the quarterback selection show on Tuesday, XFL teams also selected following quarterbacks, with additional quarterbacks expected to be chosen in the supplemental draft. Here are the new quarterbacks assignments. Arlington Renegades take Kevin Anderson from Fordham. Houston Roughnecks take Cole McDonald, Hawaii. We all thought maybe he would be going to Seattle. Orlando Guardians, Mitch the Kid from Redlands, FCF fame. San Antonio Brahmas, Reed Stinnett. San Antonio Brahmas, Jack Cohen, Notre Dame. Seattle Seahawks, Brian Urwerk, Michigan State. And St. Louis Battlehawks, Nick Tiano from Chattanooga. League and team personnel evaluated nearly 6,000 players at XFL showcases, NFL training camps, tryouts, and via film. The top prospects from these evaluations were invited to enter the XFL draft pool of 1,700 players vying for 528 spots in training camp and 400 active player roster spots. A supplemental draft will be held in early January of 2023 for players who are not eligible for this week's draft, including players who are currently under contract with other professional football leagues, namely the NFL, USFL in particular, and maybe CFL if the league will let those players go. Their official season doesn't end until February, which is when the XFL season starts. It'll be interesting to see if some CFL players wind up released and eligible. Eligible players who were not selected in this week's draft will also be available in the supplemental draft. Some notes and notable players part of this list: for both days, 18 USFL players who were free agents were drafted per XFL News Hub Pat Ruffino. Some notable names on day 2: Taylor Russolino, kicker; punter Marquette King, we're excited about him to return; Kenneth Farrow, running back, also returning; and Flynn Nagel, just to name a few, returning. Also, FCF was represented with Mitch Kidd, that we said earlier, and tight end Tommy Unger as well. First pick in the specialists: Arlington Renegades select Taylor Russolino, kicker from Millsap. DC Defenders take Daniel Whelan, punter from Cal Davis. Battlehawks take Sterling Hofrichter, punter from Syracuse. Vegas Vipers select Michael Carzosa, punter from San Jose State. Houston Roughnecks select Hunter Duplessis, kicker from Texas San Antonio. Orlando Guardians select Jose Borrellis, kicker from Miami, Florida. San Antonio Brahmas select Rex Sunarha, long snapper, West Virginia. Seattle Sea Dragons takes Thomas Flesher, long snapper from Alabama. Round 2 of the specialists: Seattle Dragons select Cameron Nizelek, punter from Georgia. San Antonio Brahmas, John Parker Romo, place kicker for Virginia Tech. Go Hokies. Orlando Guardians select Tommy Auger, Long snapper, St. John's, Minnesota. Houston Roughnecks, Brian Cordry. Long snapper, Carnegie Mellon. I believe he played with the DC Defenders. Vipers select Bailey Giffen, kicker from Lamar. Battlehawks select Donald Hagman, kicker from San Diego State. Defenders select Eric Lawson, long snapper from East Carolina. And the Renegades select Antonio Ortiz, long snapper from Texas Christian. The third round of the specialist, Renegades Tech Marquette King, punter, Fort Valley State. Yes, he returns to the XFL. DC Defenders select Jacob Schrum, punter from Buffalo. Battlehawks, Billy Taylor, long snapper from Rutgers. Vipers, Adam Huguera, long snapper from Tulsa. Roughnecks, Race Porter, punter from Washington. Guardians, Andrew Ankle, punter from McKendree. Brahmas select Brad Wing, punter from Louisiana State. And the Dragons select Brandon Ruiz, Mississippi State. On to the open phase, which is this. The league teams can pick whoever they want. They can even skip picks, which a lot of them did because they were waiting for the supplemental draft. The first pick, Seattle Sea Dragons select Josh Sulzer, offensive line, Wisconsin. Brahmas, Matthew Gotel, defensive line from Weber International. Guardians, Jemiah Gamel, linebacker from North Carolina. Roughnecks, Chauncey Manick, linebacker, Louisiana Lafayette. Vipers, Travis Kuntz, tight end, Texas Tech. St. Louis Battlehawks, Ali Green, DB from Missouri. Defenders, Zamari Manning, wide receivers from Tarleton State. Renegades select Sean Modester, wide receiver from Boise State. Round 2, Renegades, Edmund Robinson, linebacker from Newberry. I believe he was with the XFL. Defenders, Reggie Stubblefield, the DB from Kansas State. Battlehawks, George Campbell, wide receiver, West Virginia. Vegas Vipers with the 12th pick, Jalen Pinkney, D-line, Northern Illinois. Roughnecks, Duke Ejiofor, linebacker, Wake Forest. Guardians, Laka Henry, linebacker, Mississippi. And the San Antonio Brahmers, Julian McLeod, defensive line from Wagner. And then finally, Sea Dragons, Sama Pama, defensive line from Washington. Round 3, Sea Dragons, Julius Turner, defensive line, Rutgers. Brahmas take Landon Akers, wide receiver, Iowa State. Guardians, Ilroy Thompson, linebacker, Mississippi State. Houston Roughnecks, Ben Putnam, wide receiver, Nevada. Vegas Vipers, Marwin Evans, DB from Utah State. Battlehawks, Damian Daniels, defensive line, Nebraska. DC Defenders, Jesse Anambanam, defensive line from Maryland, go Terps. And Arlington Renegades select Kenneth Farrow, running back from Houston, former XFL player in 2020. Round 4, Renegades, TJ Barnes, Georgia defensive line, Georgia Tech. Defenders, Messiah Bailey, wide receiver, Morgan State. Battlehawks, Stephen Mitchell, wide receiver, USC. Vipers, Mustigam Williams, wide receiver, Tennessee. Roughnecks, Travell Harris, wide receiver, Washington State. Guardians, Abram Holland, offensive line, New Mexico State. Brahmas, Stephen Denmark, DBs from Valdosta State. Sea Dragons, Blake Jackson, wide receiver, Mary Hardin Baylor. Round 5 of the open phase. Dragons, McLean Mannix, wide receiver, Texas Tech. Brahmas, Dejon Dixon, Nichols State, wide receiver. Guardians, Defrane McGriff, tight end from Florida State. Roughnecks, Trayvon Mason from defensive line from Arizona. Vipers, Kinnick Sweeting, wide receiver, Slippery Rock. Battlehawks, Lead Brown, running back, West Virginia. Defenders, Artavis Pierce, running back, Oregon State. And the Renegades, Isaac Natua, tight end from Georgia. Still, every team is making picks. Round 6, Renegades, Makai Drew Treadway, defensive line, Minnesota. Defenders, Simi Cobbs, wide receiver, Indiana. Battlehawks, Silas Kelly, linebacker, Coastal Carolina. Vipers, Casanova McKinsey, linebacker, Auburn. Roughnecks, Brandon Lewis from wide receiver, Air Force. Guardians, Mark Williams, DB from Eastern Illinois. Brahmas, Ben Davis, linebacker, Texas. And Dragons, Jalen Thomas, linebacker, Ball State. Now we go to round 7. Dragons, Eric Hansen, defensive line, Upper Iowa. Brahmas, Rico Gafford, DB from Wyoming. Guardians, Tyler Williams, DB from Mississippi State. Roughnecks, Kobe Kwansha, linebacker, Duke. Vipers, Nick Gugamos, tight end, St. Thomas. Battlehawks, Jake Sutherland, tight end, Moore State. DC Defenders with the 55th pick, KJ Sales, DB from South Florida. And Arlington Renegades, Flynn Nagel, returning to the XFL, wide receiver at Northwestern. Round 8, we start to see teams start to skip spots. Arlington Renegades take Joe Powell, a DB from Globe JC, defenders pass. Battlehawks, Gary Jennings, wide receiver, West Virginia. Vipers, Luke Holloway, linebacker, Idaho State. Roughnecks, Warren Thomas, linebacker, Midland Lutheran. Guardians, Lashard Durr, DB, Mississippi State. Brahmas, John Hillman, running back from Rutgers. Seattle Sea Dragons, O'Brien Goodson, defensive tackle, Memphis. Round 9, some more passes. Guardians take Justin Rogers, DB, UTEP. Roughnecks, Trevor Allen, running back from Northern Iowa. Vipers, Rod Smith, running back, Ohio State. Battlehawks, Taneli Tupu, defensive line, Washington. And Renegades, Glenn Logan, defensive line, Louisiana State. 10, Vipers, Devin Clayton, wide receiver. Roughnecks, Mike Boykin, defensive line, North Alabama. Guardians, Kelvin Taylor, running back, Florida. And Dragons take Alex Thomas, DB from Ferris State. Round 11, in the final round, Dragons take Morgan Ellison from Southeast Louisiana, a running back. Orlando Guardians take Bruce Thompson, wide receiver, Langston. And finally, Houston Roughnecks take, with the 84th pick, but not really because people passed, Andrew Whitaker, DB from Washington, Missouri. And there it is. So there's your recap of day 2 and the results. 7 more quarterbacks taken. This supplemental draft is going to be real interesting, my friends. So stay tuned for that in January.